Hi everyone, Emily here from Emily's Excellent Epics, and today I have for you my April reading wrap up. So it is 7:20, and I have a light behind me. I don't have like a ring light like behind where my phone is that I'm filming off of. So I'm gonna try to speak quickly to get this done before the light fades and it gets too bad lighting. So I apologize for the lighting, but I want to get this filmed because I have some books that I want to put back on my shelf. And then I store, like, as I read books, I actually put them on the floor right next to my sofa in, like, the reading order that I read them in. So that's how I know how to organize my books for videos. So without further ado, in April, I read 9 books. I hauled 16. Yikes! 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. Yeah, so I hauled 16. Huh. I read, total pages read was 3,081. Most read genre was romance, and the average rating was 3.86. I don't know why the most read genre was romance. I don't know why. Maybe it was like the longest book, so that way it was the read most read genre. But I don't know. Without further ado, let's get started. So, April was Amish in April. That Sarah over at Reading Category Romance and Elizabeth over at Lizzie Faye Runs Books runs. And it's like the second half of April. But I was like, I need to knock out books the first half of April. Like, if there's an obligation, like something that I want to participate in, I try to knock it out like right away. So that way I don't forget it. So I read Lethal Licorice by Amanda Flower. This is book 2, an Amish candy shop mystery. And in it, we follow Bailey King. I couldn't remember our main character's name. Bailey King. She was going to be a chocolatier in New York, but she moved to Harvest, Ohio, because her grandfather in book 1 had some health issues. And she is not Amish herself. Her father, I believe, was raised Amish and left the Amish community, but her grandparents are still Amish. And so she moves out there and helps runs her candy shop. And of course, there's murders, and she helps to solve them. And in this book, our premise is she has entered an Amish candy making competition, and one of the contestants ends up murdered. So, did I enjoy this? I did. I always enjoy this. I give this a 4.5, and I am looking forward to reading the next book. I bought books 3 and 4 in the series. So, yay. Then the next book was The Day the World Came to Town, 9/11 in Gander, Newfoundland I believe is how you pronounce it. Understand Newfoundland. Okay, so that's how I know how to pronounce it. And this is by Jim DeFeedy, and I actually listened to this on Hoopla, and that's how the narrator was saying, like, this is how you pronounce Newfoundland. It rhymes with understand. So it's not Newfoundland and it's not Newfoundland. And the narrator I enjoyed. I didn't write down his name. I should have. But the narrator's voice reminded me of Tom Hanks a lot. Go figure that. But this is just a story of what happened to a bunch of diverted planes when 9/11 occurred. I was actually was just out of college, and I was working in downtown Chicago at the time of 9/11. Like, I worked, if you look at the skyline of Chicago, I worked in the CNA insurance building. So it's a big red building. So I remember evacuating from Chicago that day. But back to this book. So all these planes diverted into the small town of Gander. And it's just a story of just the different passengers and the townspeople. And the townspeople just, like, they thought of everything. Like, they took sheets off their bed and towels from their homes and food from their homes and made sure that, like, people were just taken care of. Like, stores were like, oh man, kids need toys. Like, let's make sure that we're bringing toys to these kids. The pharmacist was like, well, surely these people have medications because they couldn't access their luggage. It was all on the plane. And the pharmacist in town is like, people need medications. And so they worked with the people to make sure that they had all of their medications. There was someone who worked in an animal shelter and was like, surely there are pets on the plane. Like, we need to make sure that we're taking care of these pets. And so it was just so incredible to see how everyone just worked together. Yeah, it just it was a horrible day, and just some good from that day. Next, I read The Blue Castle by Ella Montgomery. And for the hardest reading challenge you'll ever do, I used this for the Around the World prompt. This was Canada. This is one of two adult novels written by Ella Montgomery. And this is the only novel that is not set in Prince Edward Island. This is set in Ontario. And this was also Christo over at Books and Jams, her Patreon book club pick. And this book has seen better days because I've had this. I got this in 1989. And I've read this numerous times. And actually what I've realized is I've read more like the second half of the book and not the first half of the book. But it was interesting to go back and read the first half of the book. But what is this about? This is about Valancy Sterling. And the start of the book, she is 29, and in early 1920s, that's considered a spinster, and she lives with her mom and her aunts, and they basically just kind of beat her down mentally. Like, everyone just tells her how plain she is and not attractive, and they're very controlling of her, and she hasn't really had any close friends, and her family just don't view her as a person with feelings. They just view her as, well, she's just there and she's here to kind of help us out and serve us. And she goes to a doctor and receives a diagnosis that changes the trajectory of her life. And it's just, her family is just awful. And the people that she meets outside of her family are just wonderful people, and how she really comes into herself and finds herself and creates her own identity. I love this book. Next, I read Yesteryear by Carol Claire Burke. I took a chance on this one. I'm not a big thriller reader. And I read this for the hardest reading challenge you'll ever do. This was my new release. And this is a psychological thriller, satire, social commentary. Basically, I can never remember characters' names after I finish a book. So this is Natalie Heller-Mills. She is an Instagrammer, and she is basically a trad wife. And so it's like, here's how I'm taking care of my kids and my husband, living on this farm and homeschooling. And what people don't know behind the scenes is that she has nannies, and there are workers on her farm and production assistants and crews. And so one day she wakes up and she's living in the 1800s. How did that happen? What's going on? How is she going to figure this out? If you don't like dual timelines, I don't recommend this for you, because we go back and forth from like the beginning, from when she was in college, like actually maybe when she was younger than that, and kind of get the trajectory of her life and like, how did she get to this point of living now in the 1800s? And so we flash back from like the story of that, and then back to the 1800s and what's happening as she's woken up in this world, and how does she get back to her family? Because she's in this 1800s now, and she has a husband and kids, but they're not her kids, and kind of her husband, but not her husband. It's very confusing. I just ate this book up. Like, it was like, what on earth? It was wild. And honestly, when I just ate it up and I just needed to know more. The twist, actually, I think I gave it 4.5 because the twist reminded me of something else. It reminded me of a movie. And that's all I'm going to say because anything else I say beyond that will be very spoilery for the twist. But I just couldn't put it down. And I really do, I can see how this would be nominated for the Lolly or potentially win the Lolly. That's the book of the month, like they do a book of the year award. So I can see this making that. Next up, I read The Faraway Inn by Sarah Beth Durst. And this I read as a buddy read with Fiona over at My Cozy Haven. And I love, first of all, can we just talk about how pretty the sprayed edges are? Hold on. Runny nose. Sorry about that. Runny nose. So this is a YA cozy fantasy. And in this, we follow Calissa. And she arrives at her great aunt's inn for the summer. And she arrives there following a breakup. Her boyfriend she catches cheating on her. And so her moms send her to her aunt's inn. And her aunt's like, no, you can't be here. You need to go home. And she discovers all sorts of magical things at the inn. And I just really enjoyed this. This book is a book about finding your identity and your purpose and fitting in. I think, sorry, I'm trying to look back at my notes in my teeny handwriting here. I fully expected that there would be some crossovers between her adult cozies. There's a reason why how that could happen, and I was fully expecting that, and I think that would have been fascinating if she had done that. But I did like it. I gave it 4.5 stars. Then I read The Poet X by Elizabeth Acevedo, and I used this for the hardest reading challenge you'll ever do. I use this for Hispanic Heritage Month and BIPOC authors. And I actually listened to this. I gave this a 4.0. I listened to this. This is a coming of age novel of Xiomara. She is a twin, and she is raised in, her parents are from the Dominican Republic. She's raised in a very strict Catholic upbringing, but she's kind of like questioning her that she's not allowed to date, but she meets a boy and she sees him secretively. And like I said, this is all told in verse, and so it's about her also learning about poetry and loving poetry and finding an outlet for the things that are going on in her life. And oh my gosh, the way that the men speak to her, it's disgusting and it's terrible. And like men and boys and how they treat her, and it's just it's very much a woman's experience, a girl's experience, and it shouldn't be. But I just so many people would be able to find something in this. The author is the one who narrated it, and it just was really good. Obviously, it won some awards. I don't have readers on, and it's dim in here, so I can't tell you what awards they won because I have 48-year-old eyes, and when you start getting where you have a hard time seeing near things, dim lighting, close up, you need your readers. So I apologize, I can't tell you what awards they won, but you could also use this for the hardest reading challenge you'll ever do, the award winners, because clearly it won awards. Then I read Lady Night by Tamora Pierce. This is the fourth and final book in the Protector of the Small series. And I followed along. This was a read along that Christy Lewis over at Dostoevsky in Space was doing, along with Dia over at Novel Idea and Victoria over at A Musical Bookworm. And they've been reading the 3 quartets that are in, the Tortalian World by Tamora Pierce. And in this book, we follow Kel. She is the first female to openly study to become a knight. And the book 1, she's put on a probationary year period because the instructor is kind of like, I don't really know if I can get behind women wanting to become knights, but I am the instructor. This is the law of the land. So therefore I need to instruct you, but I do want a probationary period to see, like, would this really work? Would you want to do this? Does this really work for girls to be knights? And obviously she's now a knight and we follow her journeys as Tortall is in a war with the Scanrans. And yeah, I really liked a lot of the themes of just what does it mean to be a protector and how to do that. What does it mean to, if you're given a mission but it's not unfolding the way that you want it to? And sometimes Dia made a good comment of, like, it's kind of like, when you receive a prophecy but things aren't happening the way that you want to happen, and so you might enlist your friends to help you, and it's like, no. And you know what I realized, like, sometimes, like, you might receive a prophecy or you might think, like, this is what I need to do, but things aren't happening, and you might try to hurry things along, and sometimes it's like, no, it's going to happen, but I have to trust in the timing of how that's going to happen, and it might happen in ways that I don't think of. Yes, I did enjoy this. I will say this, of the 3 series, the 3 quartets, I will say this, the Immortals, the one that starts with Wild Mage, that follows Dane, that is my favorite quartet. All right, and then, hold on, sorry, I'm trying to find where I left off. And then I read Till Summer Do Us Part by Megan Quinn. When I saw the sprayed edges, I was just like, okay, I kind of like how it continues the cover, but I also like it when sprayed edges have like a different design too. I think I like the different design better. But at any rate, so I read Till Summer Do Us Part. I enjoyed this one. So this is Scotty Price. She works at this company. A lot of guys are at this company, and there's one, her boss is a female, but she works for like a golf company, and she does like copy editing. I'm not 100% sure what she does. But all these men are just talking about all their plans with their spouses over the weekend, and they're just all so happily married. And she's coming off of a divorce, and she's been divorced like 8 months, maybe a year. And one day they ask her, so what are you doing this weekend? And she makes a comment about her husband. And they're like, but you're not married, you don't wear a ring. And she's like, yeah, well, my marriage is on the rocks. And her boss is like, well, my husband does marriage counseling, and we take marriage very seriously. And in fact, like, he runs a summer camp for couples. And if you go to this summer camp, like, you'll have the time off. Like, you don't have to worry about it. So she has a friend, and her friend's brother agrees to be her fake husband and agrees to, like, fight with her for this week so that way they could pretend that they're on the rocks, and then kind of so that way she can, like, fit in with her work and maybe they would get off her back. I did really enjoy this. It just worked for me. I love fake dating. I love fake marriages. I like the one bed, the forced proximity. I really like how the banter and the chemistry that they had. There were some things that I liked that, like, I appreciated his honesty within like the third act breakup, I didn't like it, but I also am like, I respect that you're honest. And then I like how he worked to get her back. Yes, there's a third act breakup. It's romance. There's a lot of times that there's a breakup. Here's what I thought was really weird. So Megan Quinn has pictures in her books, and I'm going to try to find one. And he has a lip ring, and they're constantly talking about how he's. Of course, I find a picture of his back. They're constantly talking about his lip ring and how he tugs on it. And in all of the pictures, there's never a lip ring on him. Now, here's the thing. I don't like lip rings. See, look. Do you see a lip ring on him? There is no lip ring. All of the pictures are like that, where there's no lip ring. And they're constantly mentioning, like, that's kind of like his tick, that he tugs on his lip ring. There's no lip ring, which I'm perfectly okay with that because I think lip rings are gross. But, you know, if you have a lip ring, I'm not, like, if that's what you want, and that makes you happy, good for you. I just don't like that. That's my personal preference. So, yeah. But, like, my criticism is, if you're going to keep mentioning it and it's something that's really big to the character, then your picture should reflect that. Okay, and then finally, I read Not Quite a Ghost by Anne Ursu. This is a middle grade retelling of Charlotte Perkin Gilman's The Yellow Wallpaper. And The Yellow Wallpaper is a short story, which I absolutely love and adore. I wrote a 15-page honors paper on it in college. It is like such an amazing, wonderful feminist book. If you're not familiar with it, I do highly recommend reading it. The Yellow Wallpaper by Charlotte Perkins Gilman is basically this woman. She's moving with her husband, her new baby. Clearly, she's postpartum. And they move into this home, and the room that she's going to spend most of her time in has this yellow wallpaper covered in vines. And at this time, and Charlotte Perkins Gilman was herself prescribed what's called this rest cure. And basically, women just sat and just rested. They did nothing. And that was supposed to help any kind of mental health issues that they might have. Of course, it does not help. So she didn't follow the rest cure. She wrote that story, gave it to her doctor. Her doctor never talked to her. But just such a good story. At any rate, back to this book. So this is a middle grade retelling. So we follow, I can never remember names, Violet Hart. Violet Hart, her family is moving to this new, this old Victorian house. And they're moving there because she's a blended family. Her stepfather and half-brother, her stepfather and mom, when they had her half-brother, they are out of space. Like, she and her older sister, who's in high school, they've had to share a room. They just need more space. And so when they move to this house, there's this big room up in the attic that's kind of gross and moldy, and it's got this yellow wallpaper. And her sister's like, nope, I don't want that room. You can have it. And she also is starting middle school. And just, we have got changing friendships, trying to start middle school. This wallpaper that's really creepy. And she just gets sick. And she just keeps getting sick and tired. And what's going on? And is there something in this yellow wallpaper? And I just really enjoyed this book. I felt like there were a lot of themes that were addressed in this book. So you've got a blended family and those dynamics. Her family, her stepfather is African American, I believe. And so there's some commentary about, like, and discussion about, when they're out together, people make comments on that. Her biological father is absent. He left the family when she was 3, so there's discussions on that. Again, like I said, it deals with friendships and changing relationships with friends. It deals with long-term COVID. Her younger brother still has some lung damage from that. What is her illness? It deals with autoimmune chronic fatigue syndrome, medical gaslighting. Gosh, what else? Changing relationships with an older sister, where once they were close, and her sister's now in high school, and how has their relationship changed? Like I said, I just thought it had a lot of some big themes and did it really address them really well at a middle grade level, and I really did enjoy it. All right, so that was it. So let me kind of get you caught up on some stats, because I'm always trying to bring down my book numbers. Or I should say my percentage of unread books. So in April, I started the month with 803 owned books. I ended the month with 819. Total unread, I'm sorry, let me back up. Total read books was 850. Hold on. Sorry, I read that number wrong. Total read books was 350. I ended the month with 358 books read. Total unread was 453. I ended the month with 461. I did not do pluses. So for my total owned books, I added 16. For my total read books, I went up by 8. For my unread books, I went up by 8. But my percent unread, I started April with 56.41% of my books were unread. I'm ending the month with 56.29% unread. So I decreased that number by 0.12%. Only 0.12. And it doesn't look good for May either. So we shall see what May brings. But what was my favorite book this month? Like, if we're going, like, I don't know. Like, I really liked Yesteryear. I also really liked Not Quite a Ghost. I don't know. I had some really good reads. Like, and I also really liked The Day the World Came to Town. I will say this. I will be putting Poet X, and I will be putting The Day the World Came to Town in my Pango shop. Like, that doesn't mean that these are bad books. I think these both were excellent, excellent books. I just don't see myself ever rereading them again. And I know, excuse me, I mean, I listened to this on Hoopla, so I know I can get this on Hoopla. Actually, this might have been the best book I read. I don't know. They were all just so good. So, like, this I could get, both of these I listened to on Hoopla or Libby, so there's no reason why I need to keep a physical copy of them. So, I need to make some shelf space. So, what was your favorite book that you read this month? If you're not sure what to comment, there's a question. If you don't really have if you're having a hard time picking a favorite, like I clearly am, I'm trying to think of an emoji. Since this was summer break until Summer Do Us Part, and we're heading to May, and I've got 3 weeks left before summer break, put in like a pool emoji if there's one, or ice cream, or something fun, or a sun. Sun is a sign of summer. Put in a sun emoji, sun sign of summer. There we go. As always, thank you so much for watching. I appreciate it.